Hello everybody, thanks for coming.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine.
You enjoying the festival so far?
Yes, very
That's
much.
really great to hear. So we're discussing departments today, or different kind of departments that are not as presented as often, at least with these festivals. We have Markus Krohn here presenting his film Chris the Swiss. He's a sound designer. We have Jule, the director of photography and the camera operator of In Search. And also with us today is Marilina Giménez, presenting her film A Girl Band, or the original title is Una Banda de Chicas, with Florenzia, also a co-director, who's here. Thanks for coming. What are your impressions of the festival so far?
I think that it's more huge than I was expecting of this. Yes, very interesting film festival. The films that we saw were very interesting.
Yes, it has a great program, very strong films.
A lot of different themes that are here, and which gladly you are also a part of. Jule, about In Search, especially regarding documentaries, you usually try to remain as objective as possible, and usually not to try to intrude on people while making the film. How did you go about that, especially regarding this movie, or what made your approach so special?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this this attitude, or the standard of having this distant, observative look on things in documentary films, I don't totally agree to that. I think it's a challenge being a DOP and being a human being at the same time, and not using the camera to as a power tool, so to say, but to use the camera as a tool for getting transparent and getting closer to people instead of distancing yourself from people. And with my project with Beryl Magoko, our film that I represent here, because she's in the Caribbean, in Guadeloupe, and at another festival, so she's traveling the world with this film now, which is really good. And it's a self-portrait, so from the beginning it was clear when we started working on the project that it's going to be a very intimate subject, and I wanted to be as much of a friend as a professional camera operator at the same time, so that was important to me.
And I imagine quite difficult to. How did you and Beryl originally meet, and how did this project come about?
We met at the Academy of Media Arts in Cologne. That's now 4 years back or 5 years back. I don't remember. And it was the first day. Beryl said she was very shy when she came there, because obviously it was only a few black people around, so it was a very white European setting, and she felt shy, and we started to get into a conversation, and shortly after we were presenting our previous films at the Academy, and I saw some excerpt from her previous film, The Cut, that she realized in Uganda at the film university there. And I was super impressed, because for me, I could figure out that I saw, for the first time in my life, I saw someone who was affected by female genital mutilation representing herself and confronting this from her own perspective. And that really impressed me, and I had a huge respect for that. And we slowly got into a conversation about this. I didn't impose myself on her and started asking questions immediately, but it came like slowly. And when she told me, you know, I have heard about options of reconstructive surgeries for the clitoris, that are practiced in Europe and the United States, I was like, wow, what, like, I have never heard of this. What is this? And then she said, yeah, and I'm considering making a film about myself and the question, should I go for this surgery or not? And when she told me that, I said, okay, if you need any help with this, I'm here, and I would do everything to support you.
I think that's great. And the scenes that I've seen so far were so touching and also extremely uncomfortable to watch, because the consequences that she had to suffer because of this mutilation are, they really go under your skin. And I was wondering what your process was during these scenes, because in some scenes it almost was like the camera wasn't present at all, like the viewer maybe even shouldn't really be there, because it is one of the most intimate situations you can be. And you've captured all of that, and I would like to know how you executed that from a technical aspect, but also how that affected you emotionally, because you were present during all of these scenes. You were really there as a person,
obviously.
Jule.
I was very much affected emotionally in those moments, but what helped me doing my job was the task that I was given by Beryl, because she asked me to do it. She asked me to be there and to document this, because it's part of her story and it needs to be told and people should know about it. So that helped me. But obviously, I mean, these scenes in real life are much longer than they end up to be in the film. So there were moments that I just put the camera aside and was there as a person, and then I took the camera on again. So it was, I mean, we worked on this film we filmed for more than 2.5 years. So it was really a long way to go, and we had a lot of conversations and discussions about how we do this. And what always helped me, that I could tell Beryl, look, in the end, you are the one who takes the decisions about what will be the film and what will be told and what won't be told. So you have the power to decide in the end what kind of images that I take will be representing you to the public. And that was very helpful.
Yeah. What I found really interesting is that you were also very much a part of this movie. There are scenes with you interacting with her as well, and I would think that's rather unusual for your department specifically. And I wanted to know how that changed your way of filmmaking, essentially, or how you go about your job.
Yeah, I mean, in this film we were confronted with all kinds of shameful situations, especially for Beryl. I think, I mean, for me it was also super interesting, because I considered, before I started going on this journey together with Beryl, I considered myself to be a sexually educated person. And suddenly I found out it's actually not true. There are still so many things that I don't know and I'm not aware of, and that it's really worth exploring more and going deeper and looking at those things. And I think you're talking about a scene that we are looking at each other's genitals.
Yes, I've seen that one.
And that was also a long way, because we were watching films together. We talked about this, and Beryl always told me, you know, like, I want to see a real vulva, how like that never had been cut, and I want to see it in reality. And would you show me yours? And I said, yes, sure, but I think since we're in this process of the filmmaking, we should do it in front of a camera. Because otherwise, of course, it would be like your private research, but let's make your private research part of the film. And so we pushed this actually until the very end, until it got really intense, and it was clear that Bertel is getting more and more in a situation that she is exposing herself and getting vulnerable in front of the camera. And I somehow felt like, okay, I can't leave her there and stay on the safe side of the camera and just, hide myself. So then there was this moment that we said, okay, let's do it. Finally, we set up the camera, I set the frame, and it was a weird situation, especially being a cinematographer, to set up your camera and then just leave it there, no? And then you sit in front of the camera and you're thinking like, okay, is this recording? It doesn't matter.
I think it's hard to let go for someone like you, who's always in control of what's happening behind the camera. So I think that's a wonderful way to experience that as a viewer as well, to have someone that you usually don't see in front of the camera and really interacting with people that way. I think that made it really special.
And I'm a shy person. I mean, I don't like to be exposed myself, but I totally understand, for example, in the case of Bertel, that it's so necessary to do it and to overcome all these fears and doubts and insecurities.
Do you have any regrets making that decision?
No.
You're proud of it?
Well, yeah. No, it was fine.
And what about you, Markus? Because I think your department is something that's actually very vital to film. Sound design is an incredibly important choice. It gives the film its tone, essentially, its atmosphere. And I think a lot of people don't really know about sound design that much, or what a sound designer was. And I was wondering if you would care to elaborate on that, and also specifically, of course, for Chris the Swiss, your movie.
Yeah, in general, it's really difficult for people to understand what we do, because people that are not involved in filmmaking, they think the film is shot and the sound is there and then it's just edited and more or less. When I think about conversations with my father or something, it's sometimes difficult to explain what it means to invent a sound. Then there's like, what do you mean? So, but this is what we do sometimes. Inventing sounds for things, especially in animated films. You can't really get away with natural sounds. You can, but very often you need to find a special texture or something to make animation become not trivial or something. When you, like in our film in Chris the Swiss, we tried to find the right kind of sounds, the right character of sounds. And when we used really natural sounds, it started to look trivial, too simple. Some of the magic was gone. Then you do it the other way around. You try something really artificial, and then it becomes too arty kind of things. So you lose the seriousness of the topic, still talking about war and so on. So you can't play around like in a children's movie, which is also fine, but it was not the right way to go. So we had to find somehow textures in between. Like so real enough,
balance between these two extremes.
Real enough to work, but unreal enough to be not like in the natural environment, which is difficult when you show a forest and then you want to hear some presence of the nature. So you put some wind, and then you leave out elements, no leaves, no birds. You make it unnatural in this way, and you leave just in few of the elements of the natural atmosphere. That gives it a slight weirdness, which made it work in this case. So what it means in sound design in general is not only this invention of these sounds, but it's more about the soundtrack character, let's say. Excluded music. There are composers usually. So it means you find a balance in the tone, you find a balance in the sounds for the characters. There's one of our departments, it's called Foley. The guy in the messy studio making footsteps, and which is a nice process to make. And it's still made like 30 years ago. Really a performing artist who is performing footsteps, movements of the characters on screen. That's a point where you have a big influence on the character of the people on screen. Do you give them light footsteps or heavy footsteps, a little bit slow footsteps? You can make them straightforward, you can make them hesitate, things that happen outside of the screen. So you can form this character a little bit. So this is when you work dramaturgically, of course, with the characters, especially in feature films. In this case, this Wirsz, it was documentary. So we had, because of the drafts of the scripts, that Chris, this journalist who was killed, the main character in that film, what he left was description of his environment. And Anya, the director, she carefully read this, of course, and she wanted to reproduce, in respect of the documentary filmmaking, as close as possible that environment that Chris described when they were on patrol on the snow, for instance, and he described that it was like harsh snow with a thin layer of ice on top of it and so on. So this kind of sounds we reproduced and found a way. We had a Foley artist from Finland, and so the guy knows about snow. That was a big advantage. And we recorded different kind of footsteps, soft snow, icy snow, and so on. Wow. So in this way, also in the animations, we have this documentary influence by trying to be as close as possible to these descriptions that we had.
Yeah, and I think that the detailed work that goes into this is very often unnoticed by the viewer, or shouldn't exactly be noticed, which is, yeah, it's not easy to, I imagine, to feel content in that way, because someone watches a movie and he thinks, well, the sounds that I'm seeing right now, those are produced by whatever film I'm seeing.
When you have a film and you work on it like for a month, or depending on the project, 2 months or whatever, and you go to the final mix and you have silent scenes, not silent meaning no sound, but let's say quiet scenes, and still you have on the mixing desk maybe 100 tracks. They are not full with sounds, but there's some atmosphere here and some wind there and little sounds here and there. So there's still many elements, or even if it's quiet, and when there are scenes with music and some action going on, it can be a lot of sounds that work simultaneously. And this is sometimes impressive for people to hear. What it's 200 tracks of sounds. What might it? Because they sit there and they hear a natural environment. They see the characters on the screen, and for them the feeling should be believable. For them it should be just the right dynamics, the right characters, and if we achieve that, then we succeed. So if sound sticks out like being unnatural, which you also can do if you want to distract consciously in some moment, where you can do that, but that should be a moment or two, because people will just get used to it and then the effect is lost. So if you overdo, they actually get used to a certain sound and incorporate it into the movie. Yes, and that's when you can step out of it consciously to produce some effect or something. Yeah, so it can be a very detailed work.
My experience from our documentary film was that the sound design gave it a much deeper emotional scale. So it gained depth, like it got deeper emotionally after the sound design. And I had this experience in the editing that we watched the footage all over again and again, and we got really distanced from it. And after we watched the first version, after the first sound design, I again almost started to cry, because it touched me, it reached me really deeply.
Yeah, that's what we can do. We can focus on those elements in the sounds that were actually recorded during filmmaking, during the shooting, which are important for storytelling, and lowering its manipulation, right? So, but also, yeah, but you have to be honest, also a camera frame, the choice is also already a choice, and so on, we do the same. And then we focus on those things that we want to tell. Like the most simple example is you have a noisy environment and some people talking. What you do is you want to bring up the dialogues more comprehensible, so you reduce background noise and so on. You make that more plastic, that is important in the moment. That's That's handcraft ship, or how is that word in English? I don't know. So that's when you know how to do that professionally. And what you're talking about is also the design of emotional impact, which you can do with very small things, very little sounds that you hear a little bit, or you create a silence and you put a small sound in the right moment, which can raise just attention. It can be sometimes anything except nothing. So it just raises the attention in a certain moment, and then the attention of the spectator goes maybe to the character or to the dialogue or even to the music when there's some nice theme coming which enhances some emotion or something. Of course, that's what we want to do.
How did you do this in this movie specifically? Because you have a lot of different animations and each of them tell a unique story, and the rest of the movie is a really raw and rough documentary about essentially also the consequences of this war in Yugoslavia. And the animations, they tell sort of even stories that fill the gaps of whatever raw material was filmed. But they all differ from each other, and I was wondering what your process was, especially for the sound design, when creating these animations, because at the end it still has to work for the film in a combination of everything.
Okay, we had conceptual talking in the beginning, and then you start to work, and then you see what you get from that and what you can't realize and what turns out to be different at the end, but also okay. But one of the main concepts in the beginning was we watched the film in Zurich together with editor, composer, director, producer, and we felt already that it might be difficult to perceive it as one complete film because of the different aesthetics of the different kinds of material. So we have archive material that had unusable sound because it came from TV, and then you have some out of war times, and then you have someone talking hectically on it and in French and in wherever the material came from. So we couldn't use it, so that had to be erased in most of the time and redone. Then we had conventional, I'd like to say, documentary shot material, like when Anja is talking to the other producer and standing on the field, having their conversations or visiting some places and people and so on. And we had, of course, the animation. We had a very long, historic, educational sequence telling the background of the things that happened in Yugoslavia, Republic of Yugoslavia, to just show a little bit where tensions came from. So that's
historical context, essentially.
Yes, we couldn't get around it in a way. So Anja tried to make it shorter because we knew it's a little bit long, and you have to. But it was important also for producers to explain all that. And our main goal was to make one thing, solid thing out of it, from this fragmented film, and at the same time to emphasize the differences between the different kinds of material, because we wanted, of course, and that's what the animation is, we go in the world of Chris with these animations, we go in this craziness that he is going through, and so we wanted to involve the audience as much as possible in this sequence. That's why we made them really cineastic. Animations look great, I think, and we used the biggest possible sound format in cinema that is existing at the moment, this with speakers on the ceiling to have atmosphere and music from all around to really suck people into these things. And then within these animations that appear again and again, we also had the dramaturgy to make that effect stronger from the beginning to the end. We start with a nightmare, which is kind of strong. That's Anja's nightmare, and she had clear ideas what she saw, what she heard, and so on. And then we travel with Chris, and the craziness gets stronger. So surround gets bigger, and effects are louder. And then we had this idea to show what happens in his psychology, in his state of mind when he made this progress from being a journalist, becoming a mercenary himself, more or less, That was not from one day to the next, it was a process for him. And at the end, he trying to escape from that with the consequence to be killed at the end by someone. And that was this one line of dramaturgy. Then we had archive materials, which we wanted to show as raw as possible. So that's all, when I put sounds, really bad recordings. I've searched old archives from 60s or what, when sounds were recorded on magnetic tape in mono, maybe used a lot of times, so they sound ugly, consciously. And that's how we made the design of the archives: mono, small, and rough in a way. So, and the documentary things we did just conventionally in a 5.1 mix, usually done in cinema, with no special effects. I try to clean it and keep that as raw as possible, but in fine quality, as fine as possible, because the production sound recordings were also sometimes difficult. Like when they stand on the field and they talk about Opus Dei or what was this conversation, and they have the street in the back of the camera, and no one was thinking about it, and then you hear the cars and you can't get rid of them, so there are cars now. Okay. But that's documentary, that's how it was. Okay. And the other things, the animations, are really made up. Yeah.
How long was that process? The entirety of the sound design, yeah, for the film.
It was meant not to be so long in the beginning, because when I was asked if I would like to do that film, then they said it's a documentary with a few animations. So you make your quote, you count, it says, yeah, okay, a documentary can't be too big. You have to also calculate what it will cost and so on. You can't make a feature film budget, then you won't get the job. So then we saw the film, and then it took longer. But producers made it possible. They had anyway problems with financing because of some political issues with the film, and of course you worked a little bit longer, yeah, but I think it was worth it. And we, at the beginning I was meant to be to do everything myself, but then we had a new co-producer, Finnish co-producer. That's how we got the Foley artist from Finland. So we could share a little bit the work between us, and that was nice. And I think it was 3 months, all including a recording of the dialogues and editing of the production sound as far as there is some, and sound design, I don't know, 20 days or something like this, approximately. Then we had also stops, because there were questions about the material. Sometimes we couldn't use archive material, because it was in the film, and then the source of this material, Croatian TV or former Yugoslavian TV, then they reconsidered that they don't like the film now anymore, and they forbid to use some. I mean, the consequence was re-editing, changing the structure a little bit, and so on. And then when you're already in the process of working, you lose some time, you redo it, and stuff like this. Also, experimenting took some time. Like what gave me the headache was these insects, a cloud of insects. Anya just said all the time, yeah, I know what it should be, and then it was like some haptic, tactile, ugliness, insect kind of, but no insects. So, and then you're sitting there, you say, yeah, I'll do it. And then you think what you can do. And it's not like, it's dynamic. There are persons, then they become a swarm of insects, and then they're flying somewhere, and then they are coming back, and they are becoming soldiers again, and then you can't use insect sound, it's ridiculous. I tried, of course, but it was nonsense. So you had to invent things, and we tried with microphone, and at the end I made it from my voice, and so it's not recognizable anymore, because it was running through a lot of effects and stuff.
So it's really like an alienated kind of voice recording that you then sort of transformed into something else?
Yeah, what I did was I didn't have an idea what to do, and Anya said, I'm coming next week because I'm working in Leipzig, and I needed to show her something. So I closed my windows and doors and everything, and I have the picture on the screen in my studio. I have the possibility to watch on the screen. And I took the microphone and run it through some effects, and switched the light off and watched the film and did something. And I recorded what I did, and it was ridiculous. It was not insect, but I needed the sound to have a performance, to move, because this swarm is all the time changing its shape and going up and down, and you cannot use static sounds on it. It's not adequate somehow. It doesn't want to work with the picture if you have the wrong sound. So I tried to find the performance first, and about the texture of insects, I thought I will take care later. Okay. And then she came and I showed her this raw whatever, and she said, "Yeah, okay, but now we have to go further." But then she was not like, "Oh no, that's really not working." It was not working yet. But since Anja is also or mainly an animation artist, she knows that there are steps of work, stages of work. And what I had this idea to capture the performance and bring texture in later, that was for her something really natural, because they also do that. Not in this film, but there are this kind of animations when you put just characters or you record motion tracking of actors and something, and then you have these models on screen that look like persons, but they don't have a surface. How is that in English? I don't know. These wired figures. Like in the AutoCAD, when they produce machines and stuff, when they do these constructions, computer constructions, they have just the shape and the movement, but no skin, no material on the surface and so on. She knew that process, and she said, "Yeah, okay."
So it's essentially like a storyboard.
No. It's like in animation. I don't know. I'm not a specialist, but I know there is a technique that when you, for instance, when they record real actors with the black suits and they have dots.
Motion capture.
Yes, and then you have these dots moving. Yeah. So the character is there, but it's not looking like anything.
I see. Yeah, no, that's motion capture. I think
yes, that's what I had in mind. So I don't know the right terms. And for her, it was we can do it also this way. So that's when I was grateful to have an animation artist as a director, because
understands also.
That there can be a next step on top of this. That was cool, and that's how we got somewhere. And now, when I watch the film, it's already natural. There's this swarm, it's flying here and there, and then it disappears, like it would be nothing. But it was in that moment, it was something to invent.
Oh, that's great. Especially speaking of sound design and also producing sounds of your own. You were also a sound designer, from what I understand, before you started to work on this film.
I work in the industry as a sound recordist. So Una Banda de Chicas was my first film that I'm direct. For me at first was really strange to direct and not to make the sound. So I mix the roles. Sometimes I make sound, sometimes I make camera. Florenzia came with me, and sometimes she makes sound. It was very strange, but for the film it's very important, the sound, so I try to do it my best, and then I ask Sofia Straface, the sound director, that do the best that she can with the mezcla, I don't know how to say, with the mix and the ambience and that kind of things. I think it was a great work. Not to do all the departments in my film, but I was in camera, I was in sound, I was directing some of the bands.
So you were involved, but you didn't have to do essentially everything yourself. You were essentially a director, which you are for the movie as well. So that seemed to work quite well. How was your relationship during the process of filmmaking. Did you have your difficulties, or did you have a workflow that was always there and it just went well essentially, or did you have your ups and downs?
I think at the beginning it was a little difficult because we didn't have a clear storyline, so we just went out to record. You know, like we knew that one band was playing, so let's go, let's take the camera and let's see what happened. So we had a lot of material. It was like almost 7 years.
Yes.
of recording and following our characters. But then when the script began to have a big structure, and it was clear, and we had a more clear idea of what we wanted to do, how we wanted to record the shows, how we wanted to do the interviews. It was a nice process. I think we worked together very well.
What influenced your decisions to pick out like certain material, because you recorded so much, and then watching all of it must have been very exhausting and a long process, but what were the decisions that you had, or the motivations behind saying, okay, we'll choose this and we'll leave this out?
I think that when we searched the narrative structure, that was the decision to cut this part. Works and for that moment, that part. But this was work that we made with Julia Strafase, who is the montajista. Editor. Yes, it was a long process, and it was very, very good process.
Yes, and we recorded many bands, and we had to leave some out of the final cut, because it was impossible to include them all. You have to tell a story, so we had to choose the characters that brought us the topics we wanted to talk about.
And what were those topics that were important to you, that you really wanted the movie to show?
I think that the most important thing is the women musicians that broke with the women stereotypes. I think that in music there is something ¿cómo lo digo? Que se espera algo de las mujeres, como eso, como que lo más importante era eso, como que
at least in Argentina, like for a women musician, you are expected to be in a certain way. You have to perform in a certain way. You have to have a soft voice.
Maybe play folklore or tango, something like that. And that kind of women that we should, they broke with that stereotypes. This is one important thing in the film. The other is to show different kind of feminism. Not only one feminist, different kind of feminist. So each band represent different feminists.
But from what I've gathered is just all of these bands and everybody who's making music has such a strong urge to get it out. You can really feel it, and to have those voices heard, essentially. Did you feel that your movie had an impact on the whole music scene in Argentina, and also how people how did they react to your movie in general?
Well, we still haven't had our premiere in Argentina.
We are going to have.
We're going to have it in November. We screened it in the Mar del Plata Film Festival, and it was very well received. There was like a lot of enthusiasm.
We were in Rotterdam too, and it was good too, very good, yes. And it was very nice because for Argentinians, the film had, I don't know how to say, una importancia, but to know that people from outside Argentina understand the film. It's very important. I think it was not a problem in Argentina. It's not only in Argentina the problem. It's a worldwide problem. There isn't too many bands of girls at the top. Do you know? Can you tell me one band of girls?
First that comes to mind is the Pussycat Dolls, but I don't think they're really that relevant anymore. But yeah, good question. Yes, I don't think there's that many. That's true.
There aren't many in the mainstream, but in the underground.
Wasn't there some Spice Girls or something?
Yes. But are they now?
I don't know.
I think they.
But there are girls doing pop, but girls doing rock or doing reggaeton or doing other kind of genres that they are not expected to be doing, perhaps.
It is Pussy Riot, probably.
Yeah, for example.
Yeah, I was going to ask what are your hopes for the future? What do you think you can achieve with your film, or what do you want it to achieve?
La visibilización es lo más importante. She's going to respond.
One of the motivations for the film was to make these girls that are doing this amazing music to become visible to our, because there are many bands playing in Argentina, and you can't see them in TV or you can't hear them in the radio, or they don't appear in media. So the idea was to make them visible and to be able to show them in Rotterdam or here in Germany. It's making real that hope of taking their music to the world.
That's wonderful. What about you? What would you want sound design to achieve in the future, and how do you think you can contribute to that with your work? Because, like I said in the beginning, I think it's something that's very much overlooked.
Actually, not so much. I mean, it's not so really consciously perceived by the audience, except you have films like American big films that are, of course, putting a lot of money and effort to the sound, and they sound perfect. So that's when people I know that are not involved in film, that's when they say there was a cool sound in cinema, Star Wars or whatever, these kind of films. And so people are aware in these examples. In art house films, which is what I mainly do, or sometimes musical documentaries or something, it's more like you said, that it is to enhance emotional impact and to lead a little bit on the emotional path through the film. That's what you can achieve with the sound, and it is one element in filmmaking that has to support story and characters, and not very often is in the situation that it has its own life in the film. Otherwise it would be a sound installation or what. So, but there are films like, recently I made some animation films, and I think these films, they give a lot of freedom to the sound, because there's not this attention, boring reality, so that you have to stick to, you can be free. I just finished a short film with it's a puppet animation, stop trick, kind of old style, but with a new digital compositing.
Stop motion?
Stop motion, yeah, stop motion. And this is with some Greek gods and so on, some philosophic thing. And weird things happen, like a dove, and then she's pulling her heart out and it's becoming a flower, and these kind of things. So if I could do more of these kind of things, I would be happy, because that's a good feel for creating sounds. You are forced to develop things, to use sounds that are not. It's not just like there is a door that closes and you put from the archive the door and you put it. Does it fit? Okay, that's also sometimes part of the work. Simple things like this, but in these animations, you need more fantasy. You need to be more open, and you can play around a little bit more. And this is something that I really appreciate in the last films, which is good. And so from the playing around point of view, that's a lot of fun. And in general, regarding filmmaking, I think we stick to helping the storytelling at the end, with whatever is necessary, silence or loud moments. Like in Chris the Swiss, we have loud moments and not so loud. And sometimes people ask me, I was presenting the film in a few occasions on animation festival, and I used it in a master class when I was teaching a little bit as an example, because there's a lot of elements in it when you want to explain to students how to make the sound. And people ask, why is it so loud sometimes? And when I'm in the cinema, they play the film on a too low level. Whenever I can say, no, make it louder. So that the dialogue, that I do not have to pay extra attention to understand dialogue. If there is a voice over, it should go in just like water from the tap. So you should not make any effort to follow that voice. So that for me is the level of loudness. And then if it's that loudness, there are some parts in the film that are really loud. Which has to be when you talk about war and war crime, like ethnic cleansing, financed by some powers and so on. And you go on the dark side, you cannot make that nice. You have to really touch the people and grab the people, you tell something violent. And to transport this emotion, you have to hurt them a little bit. That's when I hope that projectionists in cinemas would develop an understanding for this and not play the films on too low level all the time. Because it's destroying emotional impact. When you sit in the mixing, you have the composer and you have the director, and then there's this violin and it should come up, but not too much, and then you push the fader and you said enough. Okay, it's just this feeling, and then some other elements, and you really work on the levels and the balances and so on. And then you have the premiere and they play it low, and a third of your work is just not audible. And it's not only because the sound guy is suffering, but it's also because they are not showing the film in the way the director made it. Let's say it like that.
What about you, Jule? What about In Search? What would you like to have that movie achieve?
Of course, and I think I speak for Bertel as well, we would like the film to reach girls in that situation that they maybe still can step up and get active to protect themselves from what's maybe going to happen to them. That is the main motivation why Bertel wanted to become a filmmaker. She always wanted to tell her story because she said that was something that she wished so much for, that this could have happened to her when she was a kid, that someone told her, you don't have to do this, it's bullshit, it's not true what people tell you. And I think that is so important about the film, to understand how difficult, but at the same time how important it is that we learn to talk about taboos and to overcome our shame and fears and step up and get loud about certain things that were kept silent. And in general, as a cinematographer, I just hope for more diversity behind the cameras. That's super important. To get a change in our whole attitude towards technical instruments like cameras that are so much in this patriarchal also vocabulary. I feel, for example, in English, I always try to avoid to use the term shooting because I find it so absurd to say I'm taking my camera and I'm going there and I'm shooting people. It's a bit like, what the fuck? This is not what why I learned this profession, no? And I think we all should start to reconsider this and try to understand what a privilege it is to be able to make films, and that we should share this, and that we should find important voices and listen to them and give them the space to be heard.
Oh, that's great. I think we can leave it at that end note. Thank you so much for for being here. Thank you so much for spreading your messages, and I hope that people get a more deeper insight, not only just into your movies, but the different departments from which you are working from. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the festival.